President Emmanuel Macron of France is arriving in China to start a three-day official state visit. In Beijing, Mr. Macron is expected to discuss trade and climate issues with his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. Then in Shanghai, the French president will attend an import expo alongside the incoming EU Trade Commissioner, Phil Hogan, and the Prime Ministers of Serbia and Greece. That's significant because Athens has already signed an agreement over the Belt and Road Initiative, which is Beijing's global plan to gain trade influence and international standing. Italy is already a member of the Belt and Road, and European leaders are worried that it may undermine trade among EU states. Well, for more, joining me now from Paris is our international correspondent, Annalise Borges. Morning to you, Annalise. Just give us an indication as Macron visits this three-day state visit. What are his motivations? What does he want to achieve over the next 3 days?
Good morning, Rosie. Well, for France's president, this trip is all about trade. The Élysée Palace, the presidential palace here in Paris, has been insisting that the commercial dimension of this visit is really their priority, and that is why the French president will be traveling with some 50 business leaders, including the heads of some important groups here in France, like L'Oréal, Airbus, but also the pharmaceutical giant Sanofi. And the French president is expected to announce the signature of some 40 business deals between French and Chinese companies. Emmanuel Macron is expected at least to continue advocating for French farmers, on behalf of French farmers in China. He was the one who managed to negotiate the end of a 17-year boycott of French beef in China during his first state visit last year. And of course, this will be, what is interesting here is that this will be the third time the French president and his Chinese counterpart meet so far this year, signaling quite a straightened and close relationship between the two leaders. They met on the sidelines of the G20 in Japan. They met here in Paris back in March. And back then, Emmanuel Macron invited Angela Merkel and Jean-Claude Juncker to participate in the meeting. This time around, as you said, he will be traveling with Phil Hogan, but also the German Minister of Education and Research, signaling that he will be talking about France, but also talking about Europe and advocating for multilateralism, something that Emmanuel Macron has been championing on. But what is interesting this morning was to hear some of the French commentators who were talking about this visit focusing more on what Emmanuel Macron will not be able to work on during this visit. They were talking about internal politics, domestic politics in China. They were talking about Hong Kong. They expect the French president to slide a paragraph about human rights in a statement, but that's not going to change anything with regards to the situation in Hong Kong. And they were also skeptical about whether or not Emmanuel Macron can actually convince China in taking part of some of his ambitious plans for climate.
The US has been in an ongoing trade war now with Beijing. From the EU's perspective, are they trying to use their clout to draw closer to China to keep them on their side?
Well, what is interesting here is to observe this issue from the perspective of China, right? Because as you said, they've been battling this trade war with the United States, and in an era where the US president is so reluctant to actually end this war and embark on a prosperous peace, Xi Jinping is interested in looking for allies elsewhere. They do see Europe as an important partner. They just appointed a first special representative for European affairs. But some here in Europe are skeptical about China's real intentions with regards to Europe. They say that China's strategy is actually to divide and conquer. You mentioned there the Belt and Road Initiative, and China negotiating directly with some countries like Italy and Greece. So there might be some kind of conflict or at least tension when they talk about that initiative. For example, I'm talking about, of course, Emmanuel Macron and Xi Jinping. But the Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs has dismissed the idea that China wants to divide and conquer. He's been talking about working together with France and sending a message to the world, a message of multilateralism.